Today, Swami has blessed us with one of his very own students as our guest speaker. Sister Sumana Murali serves as the Education Coordinator of the East Brunswick Sai Center in New Jersey. She comes from a very blessed Sai family. Her father serves as the State President of the Satya Sai organization in the state of Tamil Nadu in India. She herself has had the very good privilege of being a student of Swami. She studied in Swami's primary school in Puttaparthi and then went on to study in Swami's college at Anantapur. She has been a Bal Vikas student since she was a child, and she became a teacher at the age of 18. In spite of teaching for so many years, she has the humility to describe herself as an eternal student of our beloved Lord. She is accompanied today by her husband Murali and their 8-year-old son Shreyas. Please join me in welcoming this wonderful Sai family to our center.
Welcome everybody. It's fantastic to be here. I finally made it at Flushing. This is a milestone for me because Gange and Sheila have been asking me to come here, and they've been asking me for a year now, and it never quite happened. It finally happened today, and I'm really glad to be here and to see all of you and to share with you a few things that I can very confidently tell you. I have to tell you, I'm not perfect in anything. I am not here to preach, because all the eternal truths and all the values Swami describes in his speeches, and he gives us the essence of all the religions, the Vedas and the Upanishads in the simplest of terms. And for all that, we can listen to him. What I am here for is to talk to you from my heart and share with you what a normal person is, who I think I am. We have our own ups and downs, and we have our own challenges on being in the spiritual path. Is to share with you some of those experiences and also share some stories of Swami that I have been fortunate enough to experience with you. And I'm hoping at the end of this talk, you all walk away with a little something and change your lives in a strong fashion. How much are you there?
1 hour.
An hour?
Hour and a half.
Okay. Okay. I will share with you, and then if you have any questions, I will try to answer them afterwards. How many of us love Swami? By show of hands. How many of us love Swami? Yeah, great. Then you have to raise it high up. All of us, right? All of us love Swami. And we have our own descriptions as to how we love Swami and why we love him. And we show our love for him in many different ways. Many different ways. And each one of us has a very unique way of showing our love for him. Some of us sing all the time. Some of us involve ourselves completely in Swami's work all the time. Some of us think of him all the time. Some of us love to sing bhajans. Come and sing for him at the center. Some of us love to do service. Go out and go to the shelter and do things. And some of us are very quiet by doing our own secret little thing, which I don't know myself, in showing our love for him. But Swami says, if you love me, you have to practice something, at least one thing that I have been saying. And he's been speaking to us for many years. And all of us who have listened to his discourses know a lot of the things he said. He says it so many times. But how many of us practice what he says? At least one thing. Very diligently, without faltering, without making a fuss, without saying, oh, it's difficult. And that is what he expects from us. Somebody asked Swami, how do you master the mind? How do you be a mastermind? And Swami's answer was, think that I am omnipresent and see God in everybody. That is how you master the mind. As simple as that. You master your mind by seeing God in other people. Isn't that the reason why we say Sai Ram to each other? It's not a substitute for hello, but it is a way to see God in the other person. And people who don't know Swami say other things. Some say Jai Shri Krishna, some say maybe some Hari Om, Hari Om. I'm sure there are plenty of them. And they all mean the same thing, to see the inherent divinity in the other person. And to see Swami everywhere, to see Swami every single time, in every single thing you do, is not easy. It is not easy, but it is possible. And I tell you this very confidently because I can share with you some stories. We'll do the stories first so that you have time to process. I can share with you stories of Swami's omniscience, of how he has been everywhere, at places you did not expect, at places you thought he wasn't hearing you. And when I say he's omniscient and omnipresent and omnipotent, I mean it in every single way. And once we realize that he's omniscient, omnipresent and omnipotent, we will automatically change ourselves in our individual lives. And once each one of us changes ourselves in our individual lives, we will become a society that is more aware of God. Because what is a society? It's a collection of people. And if the collection of people are a set of people that have realized that we are a spark of Him, and so are our friends and our family and our relatives, then we have a society that is aware of God's presence, that is morally bound, and that will function the way it is supposed to. And you will end up with a society that is in conjunction with nature. So you will have an individual, a society, and finally a world that is in harmony and that is with peace at each other. But let us not go to the level of the world, let us start with ourselves. At our individual level, how do we realize that God is with us? And how do we show it? All of a sudden, I cannot say, oh, Sai Ram Sheila, you're God. Doesn't come like that. And I still see her as a person with human traits. She has her own personality. And that is how we all view each other. I know Gange uncle and I know Sundar. I just know them as people and I associate them with certain human traits. But how do I see the God in them? That is very difficult. But there are a few practical steps that you can take, that I am myself trying to take as one single step towards realizing that the other person is not very different from you. And the first example I want to give you is to have faith, ultimate faith in your God, whether it is Swami, whether it is Jesus, whether it is Buddha, no matter who it is. Ultimate faith. And when I mean faith, I mean no questions asked. And I can give you an example of somebody very close and dear to my heart, which was my mother, who showed this quality of faith in Swami, faith with no fine print. That's what I call it, no fine print. When you surrender to Him, you should stop worrying. That is what is surrender and that is what is faith. Stop worrying. If you had something that was really bothering you, how many of us just say, Swami, you take care of it and then not worry about it? You don't, that's excellent. That's how you should be. That's the way to go. And my mother showed me that that is possible, and Swami showed that He will respond. He will respond. Amongst all the millions of people that are there waiting to see Him and get a glimpse of Him, He will respond. She fell very sick last year, about 18 months back, very sick. A healthy woman was in bed, paralyzed on one side with no history of anything. She decided to go all the way to Puttaparthi from Chennai, which is about, if you drove, it's about close to 11 to 12-hour journey. She decided to get in that car and go to Puttaparthi and ask Swami to treat her. So she is paralyzed on her left, but she wrote with her right hand. She scribbled a few letters. She had lost partial vision, so she started writing from the middle of the paper. Her vision was one-sided. She wrote, and I had the opportunity to read that note. It said, "Swami, give me your divine prescription. The doctors say I'm sick, but I want your divine prescription." Much to the discomfort of my father and brother, nobody would want to take a person who is paralyzed by car. You don't know what the reason is, by the way. They didn't know why she was sick. The doctor said she's sick. She didn't know why, what. She did not wait for a diagnosis. She went. Some doctor told her something. She partially understood it. She went to Puttaparthi. It was December 31st. Next day is New Year celebration, and for those of you who have been there, you know exactly how crowded it is and all the festivities that happen. She sat down in a wheelchair. She was wheeled to Sai Kulwant Hall. She sat there with her letter clutched in her right hand. And she's sitting there and she doesn't know whether Swami will talk to her, Swami will not. At some point, apparently, she has passed out, but people thought she was sleeping. She sat there, all the morning festivities were over, and Swami goes back to Yajur Mandir. And this was actually, yes, Swami goes back to Yajur Mandir. And that evening, she sits again for darshan. No chance. Swami is not going to see her or anybody that day. He came, he gave darshan and went away. And he had his long speech too. And the next morning, she was getting ready to come back for darshan. There was a knock on the door. And when they opened the door, it was one of Swami's students who said, "Swami asks you all not to come for darshan. He says, your wife is not really well. He will come and see her." So all of them are seeing stars. You don't expect that. So my father wasn't quite sure what was happening. My brother wasn't quite sure what was happening. And he said, no, we'll bring Amma to see Swami. No, don't come. Swami says he'll send his guard. No, I will bring Amma. And Swami says to come after darshan. If you want to come to the gate. If you have been to Puttaparthi recently, Swami's new residence is right opposite the Purna Chandra Auditorium, and it is cordoned off on both the sides. There's gates. You cannot enter. So my brother wheeled her down as fast as possible. And there was a person waiting there saying, "Swami is waiting, come on in." It was after darshan. They wheeled her in, and Swami was waiting at the door to his house, welcoming her, saying, "Welcome to our house, welcome." And she's still holding on to her letter. She won't let it go. He spoke to her for an hour and a half, telling her what was wrong with her. And this is a person who is very afraid to take a medicine without reading the label at least 15 times. She won't pop a thing in her mouth. She is that afraid. She doesn't like medicines. She was very afraid. And here was Swami telling her, there is something wrong with your brain. What is wrong with you? You drove all this way to come and see me when you are sick. You had 3 hemorrhages in your brain. How many of us can survive 1? You had 3. You're sick. you need to go to the super specialty hospital and I'm going to send you to Bangalore. And you listen to whatever the doctors ask. He counseled her for an hour and a half. After counseling her and after giving a lot of personal advice on how to, I have another sister, how to tell both the daughters, and she's in California, and we had no idea my mother was sick. He said, don't tell them, they're too far away, your girls. They'll be too worried. I will tell you when to tell them. And he sends her off to the Whitefield Hospital the next day. But he doesn't send her off very easily. He takes so much personal care that the next morning, there is a knock on the door again with another science student with 2 baskets on both hands. He comes in with breakfast for the entire family. There were 3 of them and 2 helpers. Breakfast, snacks. But how far is Whitefield from Puttaparthi? 3-hour drive. Juice, coffee, tea. And then he sends another boy to ask if it is sufficient or if they need anything else. That is how compassionate he is. Can any one of us imagine Swami responding like that? He responded because this lady gave it up to him. She said, I want him to treat me and I want him to help me because I know I'm very sick. He talked to her through the whole process, sent her to the Whitefield Hospital where the doctors tell her she has a brain tumor that is of grade 3 and it has to be removed immediately with a 12-hour surgery. She has no problem walking to the operation room and laying herself on the table. It was like somebody had put a veil of whatever on her. It was almost like she was hypnotized. Didn't matter to her. She just went and got herself operated. And the next day, within 24 hours of her surgery, when I called her, that's when I got to know that she was sick. That's when I got to know. I said, what happened to you? Are you okay? And she goes, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. How are you? So she went on like that for 16 months actually, 14 months. With every single time, our entire family, my brother, me, my sister, my father, all of us had only one refuge, and that was Swami. Because all the doctors had said that she wouldn't last even for 3 weeks. Every single doctor that saw her, any major doctor that saw her, neurosurgeon, said she will live only for 3 weeks, maximum. You all be prepared because it was really big. It was about 8 or 9 inches of tumor that had gone into her brain that they had to take out. So that's quite some damage done there just by surgery. So our hope, but I didn't know and my brother didn't know, my sister didn't know it was only 3 weeks, only my dad knew. So we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And every single step of the way, when I mean every single step, Swami took care. Whether she needed chemo, whether she needed radiation, whether she needed an IV, whether she did not need an IV, what kind of food she should eat. Every single thing was dictated like he owned her solely. Sole ownership of that person that nobody had ever experienced before. How is that even possible that Swami can give attention to this one person when there are millions and millions of people waiting for a glance from him? He would call, saying,
What happened? She had a tremor once. It's kind of a seizure, but it's not a seizure because you're conscious when you have a tremor. She had a tremor once. And during the tremor, my sister and brother happened to find themselves alone in the room. And that was the first ever time she got it. First ever time. Never got it before. So they didn't know what it was. They thought she was having a seizure and they are panicking. And here rings my brother's phone saying, "Don't worry, Swami says, asks you not to be panicking. He's watching. What you're saying is not a seizure. He says it's a tremor." And Swami says, "Finish your lunch because he's taking care of her. Don't put your plate away." That is compassion in action, as scary as it would be if you were in that position, to know that he is actually watching. He's watching. That happened. And one other time, not one other time, it was one of the times, she had a tremor similarly, and even before anybody could act, she bit her tongue, and she was bleeding. Immediately the phone rings, my brother's cell phone. Who gave him the number? I don't know. And says, "Who was there next to Amma when her tongue was bleeding? Don't you have sense?" Was a phone call. So here is a lady who her only thought and refuge was the God she knew. And here are her family members who slowly towards the end got to know that she wasn't doing all that great, but she's going to turn around because Swami is giving her so much attention and she's going to be just fine. This went on for about 14 months, where we all had our own experience of how omnipresent Swami was. Each one of us, my sister, me and my brother, my father, there were multiple instances like this, and the goal was only my mother. His focus was only on my mom. We learned many lessons along the way, but his focus was only her. Finally, all of a sudden, within 4 hours, she didn't make it one day. She moved on. She passed away. And at that time, all of us were well-oiled machines. We thought she would wake up one day and just sit down and say, "I'm fine, look, Swami cured me," for the amount of care that he was taking for her. But she moved on, she reached him. And 3 days after she passed away, one of her doctors from the Whitefield Hospital, he told us, "You know, 2 days before your wife passed away, sir, Swami asked me how she was. And I said, 'Swami, I am the one who performed her surgery. I didn't think she was going to last even 4 weeks. But she lasted for so long. And you said no chemo, no radiation for a long time. And she's lived for 14 months already. You are God. You are the doctor. I don't know.' Swami says, I know it's very bad, but I kept her this long because I wanted to comfort the rest of their family members. I wanted to comfort them, and I wanted them to be more tuned and more aware into who He is. And that is how compassionate, and that is how omnipresent He is. And to earn that, we need to develop that faith in our personal lives. Another example of Swami's omnipresence is very close to home. It was right here. It's not a huge story like what I just told you, but it is fair enough. We have Bal Vikas classes, SSC classes in a school down at East Brunswick. And this particular instance I've shared with some of my teachers, and I'm sharing with you now. In that school, we've been having it for a few years there. A couple of years back, I had a dream of Swami sitting in one of the rooms. He's sitting there looking through a folder, and all the children are sitting in front of him. And I'm walking down the hall. I usually make sure that all the classes are going on well. If anybody needs any help, I try to help out. So as I'm walking down the hall, I see Swami sitting, and I go, hey, did I just see Swami? So I walk into the room, and I kneel down next to him, and the way I see Swami is through a glass window. And that school has no glass windows. The school that we are in, it's solid wall. That's how I see Swami from the hallway, is I see him sitting. I open the door and I go in. I kneel down next to him and I say, Swami, you never told me you're coming. I'm not prepared. Swami smiles and he says, I'm always here, you don't see me. And I give him a folder, he takes it, and the dream ends. I wake up, and for actually quite a few months I did not process it, actually more than a year. I did not process it and I didn't give it much. But a year after that, we moved, that school building was demolished and we had a new school building. And that is where we hold our classes now. And guess what? They all have glass doors outside with the same wooden door that I opened and went in. And I think I know which classroom it was too. And I tried to, and for me, for my little brain to put this 2 and 2 together, it took a while. It's very sad, but I figured it. I'm telling you this because of how omnipresent Swami is. It was in our hostel once, in Swami's college. We usually, all science students know how tight-knit our schedule is, that there is nothing called relaxation. Change of work is relaxation. Change in pace is relaxation. So we really don't get much time to socialize with our friends. We just say hello to each other, and we get 10-15 minutes in a day. We try to catch up. I was sharing this with the SSC kids a little while ago. Swami called us to Puttaparthi once, and we all went there, we girls. Very lovingly he called us into the mandir. Very lovingly. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember? I have my friend sitting here. He called us into the mandir and he bolted the door. You remember that? We were all happy. He bolted the door. Swami is going to have a nice private session with us. We are going to get studies. He's going to talk to us. He's going to be in here for a while. And all the boys are outside in the veranda. There's all the people sitting outside. Boy, did we know we were in for a treat. He was not happy with us. It started off as a small talk, like a discourse he started. His tone kept escalating, his pace kept escalating, and at one point he was loud. We didn't know what our fault was. And he was pointing to girls. You go to her room and you talk. You go down the stairs and you talk when you're not supposed to. And by the end of that interview, Swami was in tears. Swami was in tears. We saw a tear trickling down from his eyes. He knew every single thing that was happening in the hostel, and he was not happy. And very minor offenses. Really look at it in the large scheme of things. Very minor offenses. There are far worse things that people do and that have been done, but that's how high his expectations are. And he showed us that he was omnipresent, and he knew He wanted us to know He was watching. He's watching. So with that kind of an omnipresent Swami, how are we functioning in our lives? Right? In our individual lives within our family, we can try to develop a faith in Him and a space that will not move, that won't budge. But we are not individuals who live in a bubble. We are not isolated human beings. We live in a society. How do we translate that into the context of a society? And how do we realize that God in where we are? Let's forget society. We all belong to our nice Sai centers, our Sai family. How do we all translate that omnipresence and that love that we have for Him, that we say we have for Him, into our centers? Because I look at our center as a little society, right? We have a president, we have a vice president, we have coordinators, we have fellow workers who work with us, we have bhajan singers. We all have our allotted tasks, just like a normal society does. And within that framework, how are we functioning? And this is actually a bonus to have our center, because everybody is technically supposed to be on the same wavelength. If you moved out into a larger society and you talked about Flushing or East Brunswick or Edison or anywhere else, it's a larger society, and there are people from different walks of life, different faiths of life, who might not have the same spiritual beliefs as you. We're not talking that, we're talking smaller. And Swami is watching to see what we are doing here. And I am talking this with you because this is an introspection process for myself, and this is something that I am trying to change in my life. How are we behaving with our own fellow brothers and sisters in our side centers? And it is something that I tell all the SSC teachers in the center to remember when we teach our kids. We have a beautiful chair for Swami when we have bhajans, when we have classes. We have a beautiful altar, and we have that for Him to use. If He's there, He's sitting there, but if we could see Him, just if we could see Him, walk down the stairs, walk and come and sit here. How many things would have been different today? How many people would have been here to set up the altar? How many people would have been here ready to sing bhajans? How many people would be ready to clean up after? And that is exactly how we should be functioning every single day, believing that He is here. And if we did that, our lives would be so much more different than how it is right now. Swami gave us a practical tip once. He said, we just happen to be girls, so don't think it is gender specific. Swami said to the girls, if your husband says something bad to you, just think that he's Swami. It's the same on the other side, by the way. We just happen to be girls. Just think that he's Swami. What would we do, right? If our friend, our spouse, our dear cousins, our grandmothers and grandfathers behaved in a way or said things that weren't very pleasing to our ears. What would we do if we really thought that person was Swami? We say, okay, Swami, yes. But for some reason, that ego kind of bothers us. And that is why we had problems. Swami said this. I'm not making it up. Think it's a fantastic solution. It is fantastic. My husband is smiling sitting there. It's a fantastic solution. But it will work. It's very hard to put it to work, but it will work. Think that whoever is bothering you, or you don't agree with, is Swami. And say, okay. We would have a harmonious society, not just a family, we would have a harmonious society. Right? These are some practical tips that Swami has given us. Once Dr. Kanibanda asked Swami, he is an old devotee. A lot of the pictures that you see these days and videos that you see these days are because of him. He asked Swami, Swami, why do you have Sai centers? You have Satisai Seva organization all over the world. What is the purpose of it? Swami said nothing. And he turned around and started doing something else. So this man was puzzled. Nothing. What do you mean nothing? So he dared to ask Swami, Swami, what do you mean by nothing? What's the purpose? Swami says nothing. It's for your improvement. It is purpose as simple as that. It is for your own self-improvement. And every single one of us sitting here that are involved in our Sai centers have wonderful friends.
And we call them our Sai family. And you will agree with me when I say that we have improved ourselves a lot, or are on the path of improvement because of it. And we would be far behind. There is nobody to tell you this is what you should do, but you are morally bound because you know what Swami expects. There are things that will bother you, that sometimes you brush it aside, sometimes it's not so easy. And we try to resolve things and we try to come to a, resolution. And things work out happy. It's all happy in the end. But the process sometimes is clean and sometimes it's not. But if we work under the faith, you will hear me saying faith a lot of times today. If you work under the faith that Swami is sitting here watching you and hearing you, we will be saying a lot of things very differently. And that is something that I think Swami wants us to do. And I feel very obligated to let you know this, because being in Swami's school or being in Swami's college has taught us a lot of things, but a lot of them are hindsight. None of us realized it when we were there. We were not realized souls. We were okay, and we complained about a lot of things. We're human. Never liked to do a lot of things. Didn't agree with a lot of things to begin with. Especially when you're a teenager. Nothing is very so pleasant. That too, when somebody says you have to do it, you think it's your goal not to do it. But hindsight, Swami has taught a lot, and I feel obligated to tell you this because I've come from one of those institutions, and Swami has placed all these Sai students amidst you to pass on some message that they might have learned during that time. And I'm sure your center has many students. I already see a couple. So, but we are all still students of Swami, and we're still trying to learn a lot of things, and we learn things along the way from our own lives. The next thing we can show our love for God is by having a ceiling on our desires. It is not easy, especially being in this country. I've been in the United States for the last 13 years only. And I see a change for positively and negatively in me. I do things I didn't do before, good things and bad things. But if you were with Swami right under his nose, you cannot waste a thing. Life is extremely simple. Very simple that it starts looking complicated. It's very simple. You use bare minimals. You are in charge of your own things. You don't waste. Whether it is food, whether it is electricity, you don't waste anything. Water, you are supposed to use only maybe a bucket full of water, which is available sometimes. Or if it was a really cold day, you would probably get about half a bucket of hot water to take your shower. That's it. And it's up to you to use it wisely. And things are possible. It is possible. Even time is not available very easily. You have to prioritize and make time. And everything can fit into the 24 hours if you plan well. Not once have we said we don't have enough time. It's possible. But if it is organized well and if time is managed well. No TV. The girls didn't have TV. I don't know about the boys. No TV. We didn't miss a thing. We knew everything that was happening in the world. We were in it. We were in it, but still out of it. It's that lotus analogy that Swami gives. You have to be in it, but out of it. And that's exactly how it was. If we can adopt that, sealing on desires, by recycling, what can we do here in our lives? Recycle plastic bags is something we can all do. Try not to use them in the first place. Carry your own grocery bag to the store. Take shorter showers. Turn off the lights that you don't use in your house. If it is possible, if it is a house with little children, try to have a lights off time. Isn't it something we do even in our retreats? Why not we do it at home? Try to conserve energy by changing your bulbs into those energy-saving bulbs. There are so many things we can do, and those are the little steps that take us a long way. So with faith in that omnipresent God, by seeing God in our fellow human being, whether it is in the family or the society or our Sai center, by having sealing on desires, these are the ways in which Swami would say we love him. If we come for bhajans, we come and do our own thing, that is not the only way we show our love for Swami. He wants us to put it into action. And these are some simple ways in which we can show by action that we love him. And if we all adapted one or any of these in our lives, just one, he would be very pleased. And if everybody in the United States, every Sai devotee did it, I don't think it will be long before he would come here. It is my desire, and I'm sure every single person sitting here, your desire, that he should come here. He's never been here. And if you look at the United States, among all the other Sai organizations worldwide, we are far behind. We are far behind in doing his work. As people, we all do a fantastic job, but together. And Swami wants us to spread his message in our communities. And we all have to think about what are we doing to spread his message, not his form or his name. He doesn't want that. His message, what are we doing to spread it? What are we doing to spread it in our community? When we do that, we love him. And with that ever-loving Swami, with what he's taught me and he's still teaching me, whatever I have said to you till today is what I meant, and is something that I did not, quote-unquote, prepare to talk to you. It is almost a conversation that I'm having with you. So with that thought, I can open it out to any questions you may have. I will try to answer or
Anybody has any questions, please?
No? Okay, I guess it easy. 15 more minutes? Okay. So maybe we can get more stories. Okay. So, let me tell you a couple of stories with I have no hidden agenda here, because you take away from it what you can and what you please out of it. But these are stories that I can tell you with confidence because it happened in my family. And it happened when when my grandfather was there. The first story I would like to tell you is of Swami's visit to my house last year, 2 years back. It was during the Atirudra Mahayagna that happened in Chennai. And all the preparations were being made for the proceedings of the yagna. And all of a sudden, we get a call in our house from my brother saying, Swami says he'll come home. And I'm here in New Jersey. I'm the only one here. My sister happens to be in India. My brother's there anyway. Swami's coming and you don't even have a 10-hour notice. You cannot go. You can't fly in 10 hours. So I ended up being stuck here. But Swami came. He came. He spent about 45 minutes talking to everybody. And he inaugurated my brother's sound studio for him. And told him how to conduct himself in business. What are some things he should be doing? How much he should earn? He makes everybody happy. Everybody's happy there, except me because I'm here. He satisfies and he's on his way back to Sundaram. On his way back, after his way back, after he reaches, he asks my brother, he says, I don't think your mother remembers, but I told her 20 years back that I will come home. Was she happy that I finally did? My brother fell at his feet and he said, yes, Swami, Amma has been waiting for you. He told my mom he really did 20 years back. And I was there at that time. I was very young. I remember Swami saying, I will come to your house. We will all eat upstairs together. And we're going, what upstairs? Our house had only one level to it. There is no second level. And eat. Okay? But now we do have another level. And he came only to that level. He didn't come down. He came only there. And he did. And for those 20 years, my mother, I remember it very clearly, we would talk sitting in our living room. Swami said he'll come. You can't believe Swami. You don't know what form he's going to come in. A cat or dog, a beggar. It can be anybody or anything that is not within your range of, understanding. So we were nice to every single person that came home. For 20 years, I can guarantee you that. Every single person that came by to get food, every hungry man, every hungry woman, every hungry dog was called in and fed. Because he said, I will eat with you, so let's eat. He did that, but he kept his promise. When you think he's going to act otherwise and come as a girl or a boy or a little stray dog or a puppy, he surprises you and shows up when you don't expect it and gives you 10-hour notice for preparation. When you think he will really show up in his physical form, he will tell you, I came the other day, did you not see me? So we have to be alert and aware with Swami, always alert, always alert. And he did that. And my brother expressed to him, after the whole episode was over, he said, Swami, my elder sister is very upset that she didn't see you. She missed the opportunity to be with you. And she takes a Padanamaskar from you. She asks for your blessings. And he had a very surprised look on his face, I heard. And he said, why is she feeling bad? Because I am there. I am there. And he is here. But all these high lessons are delivered only to me. I wish it was one of my other siblings. But we have to see Swami here. And I say that over and over again, over and over again. We have to see him here because he is here. Another story I can tell you is of Swami, seeing Swami and putting our thoughts, words and deeds together. This happened many, many, many years ago in Vrindavan. Many years ago. This was even when Professor Kasturi was there. It was after darshan and after bhajans. In if you're familiar with Vrindavan and you have been to Whitefield, the older Whitefield, there was a big tree around which there was a shed, and Swami would sit in the middle and everybody would sit around him. But I think that was the time that shed wasn't there, it was just the tree. And after bhajans were over, Swami came out, and there was Professor Kasturi and a couple of other people with him. I forget who they are, I don't want to misquote names. They came with him, and Swami called one of the people that were with him, and he said, on the other end there is an old Brahmin, a man over there, go bring him for me. So this person runs outside and goes and brings him. A very old Orthodox Hindu Brahmin comes to Swami, and he says, I am so glad to see you up close, Swami. I am really happy. And he starts singing hymns. You are Vishnu and you are Shiva, you are this, you are that. And very full of gratitude to be able to see Swami up close and for Swami to give him that kind of a chance to be with him. So Swami says, it's hot and you're out in this hot sun. He calls somebody and says, go get some milk for him to drink. So this man, boy, whoever went in to get the milk, went and got a glass of milk with extra addition to them because it's Swami's guest. So he put in some sugar, some petals of rose and saffron and brought it all for this old man. And this old man said to Swami, Swami, I know I will not eat or drink anything today. Don't offer me anything. Today is Ekadashi, I don't drink even water. Swami said, it's okay, drink. I'm telling you, drink. No, Swami, I've been following this for all my life. And I don't want to drink water. It is one of the Hindu festivals where you fast the whole day, you don't drink water or you don't eat. And he said, I don't want to. Swami said, no, here, gave it to him. No, Swami, it is Ekadashi, I don't want to. And he took his blessings from Swami and he went away. After he went, Swami, and when he was there, he even read those scrolls, those nadi for Swami, scrolls from ancient times that predicted the future. Some scrolls that said, at such and such a time, at such and such a place, you will be sitting there with God who will be on earth. And while you are sitting there reading this to him, you will hear 1,000 or 100 wheels run. And there was a train that went by, because if you know Vrindavan, there's a railway track there. So he's reading all this to Swami. Swami is enjoying it. He doesn't drink the glass of milk finally till the end, then he leaves. After he leaves, Swami says, see, I I offered him milk. He called me Vishnu and he called me Shiva. I'm giving him milk and he won't drink it. If he looked at me like that, he would take the milk and drink it from me. But a lot of us are like that old man, aren't we? We have our own little minds and we are boxed and we don't want to think outside the box. And Swami said he missed his chance. And he didn't drink it. He called me Vishnu. And it is for that Vishnu that he's fasting all day. So Swami can be very, he can make you think he's a normal human being and then all of a sudden show that he is not. One recent example, I'll give you another. This is a story I heard from my brother of this trip of Swami to Kodaikanal. A couple of months back, Swami was in Kodaikanal and Swami always takes students with him, like many of you know, on the trip. And they learn innumerable lessons throughout their stay with Swami. It was one such trip, and there were a few boys that were there next to Swami, and Swami said, "Let me take a picture with you. Let's have a photograph session." So this is the little session that happens after darshan and after bhajan. Swami calls a group of people inside. There's women on one side, there's men on the other side, and he has this little all private discourse session, post bhajan discourse session. It was one such time, and they were sitting there, and my sister-in-law was there. My brother was in the adjacent room. So the boys, Swami said, "Let's take photographs. Let's pose." And they took pictures, and just before they took pictures, Swami had a couple of strands of hair from his head on his robe, and like any one of us would do, the boys picked it out and threw it, and they took a nice picture. It all turned out fine. After the picture was taken, Swami said, "You people take me too much for granted." Boys didn't know why he was saying that. So and he says, move on, let's go. And he goes to the adjacent room, which happens to be the dining hall. And he explained himself there, and my brother heard it. And Swami said, "You all take me too much for granted. What did you do from my robe?" I said, "Swami, I took away. There was a couple of strands of hair. I just took it away because I didn't want it to be on the picture." Very noble intention, poor thing. He took it out. And Swami said, "I am Vishnu, and all the hair that you see on my head is Adipesha with 1,000 heads." And you can imagine that boy who actually took it out. Poor, I feel so bad for him. These boys spent all night looking for that strand of hair. All night. They had dinner and nobody went to sleep. And they didn't leave the other boys also to sleep. They turned on all the lights, flashlights, and you can imagine how clean Swami's area is normally. So to search there should be a piece of cake. No clutter, nothing. They looked for it all night. And Swami comes down in the morning, and the first thing he asks them is, "Did you find it?" Of course not. They said, "No, Swami." And then he makes them feel better and he gives them breakfast. But that is the kind of Swami. Very loving, but he makes his point where he has to. He makes his point where he has to. And we should strive to realize that he's God and not take him for somebody for granted. He's there, we come into bhajan, we do our own little thing and go away. We have to spread his message in our community by being an example ourselves. We start with ourselves first. So, and I thank you for this opportunity of allowing me to come and share my thoughts with you. This was not a prepared speech, but all from my heart, everything that I thought I had to convey to you. And I hope you all have some little thing to take away with you, and some things to think about when you go. And I hope to see you all again and see you. Sai Ram and thank you.